Hi, I'm John Counsell. I'm a senior reporter with Texas Lawyer, and welcome to the September 26, 2008 edition of Reversed and Remanded. My guest today is Jim Jordan. He is a shareholder in the Dallas office of Munsch Hardt. And Jim, you are a business litigator. So my question for you, the first one out of the box, is our economy is a complete disaster. Credit markets are frozen. So you're sitting there in your office of Dallas Munsch Hardt, and you've got all these business clients. What does that do to your practice? I mean, do your clients start suing each other? Are they able to pay their bills? I'm just curious. What's happening to your business?
In a nutshell, bad economies are generally good for commercial litigation, good for bankruptcy, bad for corporate, and bad for commercial real estate. And that's pretty much what we're seeing. Although our corporate group has been great so far this year.
Even when they can't even get money, they can't expand their businesses unless they've got capital. I mean, what does it do to transactional? I mean, is that done?
I don't know if it will eventually hit our corporate group or not. You would think that it would, because I've heard anecdotally that it's been pretty rough on corporate groups around the country. So it could be that ours is just a fluke, or it could be the types of deals we're working on just aren't as affected. Now, it's been more of an issue with commercial real estate, although our group has held up pretty well, but there's no question it's had an impact.
Right. Do you see, or do you expect to see, that your clients are going to be a little bit later in paying your bills? I mean, does that ever happen? I've always heard that's always going to be a consequence of something like this.
That almost always happens when the economy turns down. Now, this is kind of a strange situation we're in right now, because it's really, so far, pretty much a credit market phenomenon.
Right.
As opposed to a general market phenomenon.
Right.
You've seen lots of articles about Main Street hasn't been impacted yet by the problems on Wall Street, but you have to believe it's going to come. So right now it's affecting deals because the money isn't available to get the deals closed.
Right.
But in terms of the actual general economy and how our clients are doing, most of them seem to be doing fine so far.
Yeah.
Eventually you would expect it to hit your receivables.
Yeah. I mean, do you think this is going to be so bad we're going to see maybe even some implosions of Dallas law firms? You think we get that bad?
I really don't have any idea. You would think that the firms that would be most likely to be seriously impacted would be the Wall Street firms.
Right.
Because this is their bread and butter.
Right.
And when a Morgan Stanley gets folded into another bank, that means a client may go away, or it may not. They may keep some of the business, but you would expect that this is going to have a significant bad impact on some law firms out there.
Yeah. All right, next issue of the week, we bid farewell to one heck of a judge from Dallas. Barefoot Sanders passed away at the age of 83, and there were hundreds of lawyers and judges at his memorial service on Wednesday. And Jim, now didn't Judge Sanders swear you in the federal bar?
Yes, he swore me in. He swore in a lot of attorneys in Dallas. I actually tried a case in front of Barefoot Sanders once, which was quite an experience. It was a treat. He had that big old courtroom over there when he was chief judge, and it's so big, it was like trying a case to the king.
Wow. Yeah.
And he ran his courtroom as if he were the king too.
Right.
Good judge.
Yeah, and he's the kind of guy that commanded respect in this town. And across the state of Texas, and he had the Tasby case. He desegregated Dallas schools, but this guy, I mean, I knew him when I was growing up, but he had such a hand in very important things in our history. I mean, he was legal counsel. He was the Northern District U.S. Attorney. Then he became a deputy attorney general and pushed the Voting Rights Act. And we wrote a story about him. I mean, he actually told Kennedy not to come to Dallas in 1963, and they didn't listen to him. And if they would have listened to him, the history would have been a lot different. I mean,
and you remember the story about his role after the assassination, how he's the one who hunted down the federal judge to swear in Lyndon Johnson on Air Force One.
Yeah.
And how I thought the story's pretty funny about how they couldn't find the oath of office for the president.
Right.
They scrambled all over the place trying to find the oath of office, and finally figured out it was in the Constitution.
Yeah, yeah. Another thing is people don't really remember that I'm sure Judge Sanders was not popular, especially in the 70s when he was presiding over the Tasby case and busing. Were you here, and do you remember that back then?
I didn't move to Dallas till 1986, but things were still written all the time about that case. That case went on for a long time.
Right.
And yeah, I would say that he probably was pretty unpopular in some quarters. And the busing issue's always been controversial and still is to this day about whether it accomplished the laudable goals it was designed to accomplish.
Yeah.
But he was always in the eye, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. I mean, I think great judges take on difficult issues, whether or not they want to take them on or not, and he certainly did.
And with a name like Barefoot, he just attracts publicity.
Yeah, he absolutely did. You can't forget him. All right, Jim, I guess I would be remiss if I didn't mention one thing. Jim has written a book, and it is called Forsaken, which I believe you just published. And this is how do you describe it? It's a thriller, it's a work of fiction, and it's got a little bit of religion in it as well.
That's right. It's an unusual kind of love story wrapped in an action thriller, and it has a Christian theme. It's actually the first book. I have a 2-book contract with that publisher. That's the first book in the series that revolves around a character named Taylor Passberry, a former Secret Service agent who's hired to provide security for the world's best-known televangelist when he receives terrorist threats.
Right.
The second book will be published in October of next year,
right?
And it's a sequel to this one.
Well, what do you reduce your billable hours to write a book? How do you pull this off?
I actually had my heaviest billing year for 10 years last year because I tried a case in North Carolina that lasted a month, a jury trial. So I was living at Pinehurst Resort in North Carolina while I defended them in a jury trial last year while I was writing 2 books. So I've had a busy 2 years.
Wow, I can barely write 1 article per week in my own publication, let alone a book. Well, congratulations. All right. Jim, it's now time to put you in what I like to call the witness stand. I'm going to ask Jim 4 questions that are completely ridiculous and see what he has to say. All right, Jim, question number 1. Did you consider canceling your reversed and remanded appearance so you could work on our nation's financial crisis?
No, I did not, but boy, things are a mess right now, aren't they?
Oh my gosh, it's just... Oof.
In fact, I'll tell you, my wife and I saved the headline from the Wall Street Journal a week ago Monday and the headline from the Dallas Morning News because they were historic headlines.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We're going to put them in our kids' scrapbooks.
What a nice memory they'll have of that.
It's a financial disaster.
Yes. Question number 2. Jim, how many times have you heard a business client use the word synergy?
I've heard them use it uselessly every time I've heard it.
Okay. Question number 3. Is it possible to make them stop using that word?
Only with a club.
Okay. Final question. What's more hopeless, the American economy or the American League's own Texas Rangers?
Texas Rangers. I got asked a question not very long ago in an interview. If you could wish for 3 things, what would your 3 wishes be? And my answer was, Texas Rangers win the World Series, Texas Rangers win the World Series, Texas Rangers win the World Series. So I'm a diehard fan, and it's tough.
Gotta get some pitching, Jim.
Their minor leagues are loaded, though.
Okay.
All right. Good things are coming for the Rangers.
Hope springs eternal. All right. Thanks for coming over, Jim. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.